How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Appliance Advisers with Yale Appliance. My name's Francesco, joined as always by VP of Sales, Dennis McDonald. How you doing this week, Dennis?
I'm doing great, Fran. How you doing, pal?
Very good, very good. So again, we had a lot of great audience questions last week, a lot of questions in general. So we're hoping for the same this week, and we definitely have a good start here. And we're going to jump right into it, right into the questions, just because again we have a lot of them here this week. So first question, we're going to start with cooking. And this is really more for professional ranges, but in a pro range, is it better to get something with all burners or a built-in griddle model? So on a 36-inch, for example, where you can get 6 burners, or you can have a built-in griddle with 4 burners, built-in grill with 4 burners. What would you recommend to somebody there?
I generally always would recommend 6 burners in the case of a 36-inch, and there's 2 reasons. One, it runs roughly $1,000 less expensive, give or take, to not have a built-in grill or griddle. Mm-hmm. And while most people would say, I don't need more than 4 burners 95% of the time, it's the few times during those holidays that you want extra space, or maybe you have an extra vegetable around a holiday or something like that going on, that I think the extra burners really can't be replicated. You need them. Right. Where if you do a grill, people need to understand, a lot of people get really excited thinking, I can have friends over. We could do skewered shrimp. We could do, cook. It's raining outside, especially in New England. Maybe I could grill a burger inside or steak. The thing to consider there is the cleanup. Half of cooking is cleaning, and the grills put off a ton of smoke and grease. So, you're paying more for the range to have a built-in grill. You're paying more for your hood because your hood needs to be more powerful generally. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's hidden construction costs because the way we have to vent this unit or the size of the ductwork running through the house has to be larger many times when you do a grill. And then beyond that, it's cleanup. And it's cleanup on the cabinets, on the counters. So, great, you had your steak, but now you're cleaning for 45 minutes when you're done. So it's kind of all those things, and then smoke in the house. So it's just, I generally say save that money, put the $1,000 towards a nice Weber grill or a grill outdoors, and really get the right grilled product outdoors. Those indoor grills too, many times, depending on them, some of them only go to high. They don't actually have a low, medium, and high flame like you'd think on an outdoor grill. So some of them are just made to sear meat or mark the meat and then finish it in your actual oven of your stove. So it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's not to talk people out of it. It's just to really, really consider what you're going to do with it, and you're ready for everything that it involves. Now, when you get to a 48-inch stove or the bigger stoves, you more often than not, there are exceptions, you have to pick a grill or a griddle. Mm-hmm. There are brands like Wolf, there's brands like DCS. There are brands out there that have, or Fisher Paykel rather, all burners up top. Yeah. But many times you have to, when you go that big at 48 inches, pick a grill or a griddle. In those cases, I'd tell people to put a griddle rather. Again, for all the reasons I talked about grilling, I think it's a ton of work, and I think people don't think through, will they actually use it? And then the griddle between all those things is probably the thing that you would use even more often for everything from breakfast to, stir fries to grilled cheese sandwiches. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. So I think if you're going to be forced to do one, I'd do the griddle. And then again, still keep your grill outside. Real grilling is intended to be outdoors, not to be indoors.
Yeah, definitely. And you talk about the flexibility there too. And even on a 36-inch, getting something like, they make really nice, aftermarket accessories, a griddle accessory, something like that for those, few times that you would use it, but it still gives you the flexibility of all 6 burners to have in those times, like you said, when you really need it. So yeah, all about flexibility there.
Right.
All right, so next question is going to be, of course, as always, lead times here. We got to always have at least 1 or 2 lead time question here. So, we hear this a lot too. It's like, if I'm buying an American brand like Sub-Zero, why is it still taking so long for the product to come in?
Last I had heard a number thrown around that Sub-Zero Wolf had almost $1 billion in back orders. Mm-hmm. And imagine that. So that's basic supply and demand. They're feeling the same constraint that everyone is, whether it's materials, labor shortages, computer chip, all the things we've been talking about for the last 3 years. I really don't think it has anything to do with the fact that it's American versus European. I think it's the fact that they're a high demand brand. They have a tremendous backlog, and it's that, you know, people are still ordering them, even though it takes an awful long time to get one. So, you know, but it's a great product to wait and want to get, you know. That said, like anything, there's options around those, like any brands, you know, it really just comes back down to it. But I don't think American brands are certainly aren't, you know, sheltered from COVID. Quite the opposite, because still parts come from all over the world. It doesn't matter if it's an American brand. I mean, there are parts coming from all over the world. Not any one manufacturer makes every single component in the US in their own factory. So they're feeling the same constraints, and then they have high demand. So
very fair.
Yeah.
So switching gears again a little bit to dishwashers now, and this is definitely a question we get from, you know, people that maybe have just recently purchased a dishwasher, and if they're not properly educated, you know, why do my dishwashers today, these newer dishwashers, why don't they dry as well as they used to?
They do. They're not used correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I say that because truly, if you use it correctly, you'll have as dry a dish as you used to. In most cases, just they do actually function differently. So that question stems a lot of times from people that had an American dishwasher, and the American dishwashers, I use a GE or a KitchenAid, you know, a classic American brand. They have a heating element on the bottom, and just like if you open it up, look inside, it looks like an element you'd see in an electric wall oven or an electric range in the bottom. And basically it was constantly on. It basically baked your dishes dry. It was always running. Mm-hmm. Even those American brands, still while having heating elements today, the energy restrictions, well, two things have happened. Dishwashers have gotten quieter because people have open floor plans, and we want quiet dishwashers, right? So better insulation, different washing systems, drying systems, but they've gotten actually quieter. And when they're quieter, many times people don't know they're running. You know, it's real popular to see dishwashers that don't have handles or don't have buttons on the outside. You know, there's not a clear indicator light. You know, and Americans are impatient, so they're constantly in and out of the machine. Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Then add on top of that, the governments come in and put in these restrictions on energy consumption at any one time. So before, basically, what would happen is, you know, a dishwasher, we would put a garden hose in there and we'd spray 20 gallons of water at it and just hose it all down. And then we'd crank the drying element up to 400 degrees and we bake those things dry like we were baking a cake. I mean, that's really what we did. Yeah. And 40 minutes later, 50 minutes later, voila, it's done. Yeah. Now the government comes in and says, hey, we can't use consumption the same way. We got to wash a little bit smarter. We got to take a little more time and not have that surge of energy to be more efficient. And then we made the machines quieter, so people aren't really always paying attention to the indicators to know they're running. And then on top of that, you know, to combat all this kind of difference, all machines really require a rinse aid. Mm-hmm. And if you had an really older machine, you probably never even thought about rinse aid or ever used it because the machine was just so inefficient, but it was drying because it was using so much energy. Right. Rinse aid is like wax on a car. It's a liquid agent that you put in, or it can be built into the capsules of some of these detergents that are like these little packs or pods. And it acts like a wax. It sheets the water off the glasses. It kind of repels the water and aids in the drying. And if you're not using rinse aid consistently, which a lot of people don't put it in or forget to refill it, now you could start to tell me for sure, and I'd agree with you, that it's not drying as well. The next step to that, really, though, we talked a lot about American dishwashers and how they dry and some of the misnomers about how to use them. It's really magnified when you talk about these European dishwashers. And by European, we mean brands like Beko and Bosch and Miele and Fisher Paykel. Really the desirable dishwashers today. And why are they desirable? Well, they're desirable for lots of reasons. They're flush with your cabinets and they look really clean. They're absolutely the quietest dishwashers that are out there, and people want quiet. They are far more efficient just in its overall water and drying consumption as an American dishwasher. Mm-hmm. So those are all things that people are aware of. They want quiet, they want efficient, they want to be good for the environment. So they're picking these European machines, a brand like Bosch, and people, again, don't use rinse aid and are used to an old American machine that they could constantly open that door to open and close the door and add things in last minute. Oh my God, I forgot a fork. Let me open that machine. It just started washing and put it. Well, in the European machines that we were talking about, they don't have a heating element at all. Even though we talk about the Americans have them still today, they just take longer to do what they do, and you have to add rinse aid. Well, in the Europeans, you have to have rinse aid, but they don't have a heating element at all, per se. What they do is they heat the water much, much hotter than an American dishwasher. They heat it up to almost 160 degrees, 162 degrees in some cases. And in those scenarios, they trap that hot air and energy it's created in the wash, and they're using that to dry. So it's really using condensation to dry. Now, I will tell you, I've had every dishwasher. My wife has literally probably had them all. And I'll tell you right now, the American dishwashers, a Bosch dishwasher, a Beko dishwasher, a Miele dishwasher, dries, in my personal opinion, superior to a KitchenAid dishwasher. Not even close, as long as you leave that door closed. So if you're putting it on a full wash, a normal wash, not an echo cycle, you're not trying to just do a rinse only cycle that has no drying in it. If you're using a normal cycle or an auto wash cycle, which is really the same as normal, and you're putting rinse aid in and you're leaving that thing dry, it's going to dry. The final part to that, I say to all families that have young children, that have a lot of plastics in their life, I tell them two things. One, those times pass, and I know now because my kids are all in college or are just about to enter, and kind of a lot less plastics, but I can remember in those times being crazed about plastics. Plastics invariably have always been the hardest thing to dry. They're hard to hand dry. So aside from that, if you do use them both the same, an American next to a European with rinse aid, leaving the door closed, my honest opinion is the Europeans will outperform an American machine every single time.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a lot of great tips, and definitely one of those things that we always try to, set the expectations for customers too when they're buying, because it is, if you haven't bought a dishwasher in 15 or 20 years, there's a lot of differences today, really in every appliance category, but especially in dishwashers. If you haven't bought in a while, there's a lot of different features and there's a lot of benefits and things like that, but there's definitely some things you need to be aware of, like the length of a cycle and how they dry and things like that. Absolutely.
Yeah, Fran, let's go to the question by CCAF where they ask, are Fisher Paykel dishwashers available or back ordered? Specifically for Yale, they're available. Fisher Paykel is a big partner brand of ours. We stock, I think, 9 different models every day, all day. So we have good availability. Fisher Paykel does make a bunch of variations, by a bunch, not many more than 9, but probably about 11 or 12. But of the 9 core, they're available. It would just really depend on your dealer, your market, and if they stock, which just continues to bring me back to, what we say every week. You want to be buying somewhere from a local dealer that has infrastructure and stock and the availability to navigate a very tricky purchasing and procurement situation that COVID presents. So, yes, if you're in our market, yes, the answer is yes.
Yep, absolutely.
They're here.
All right, switching gears a little bit now. So, and I really like this question, and it's an interesting one. So, refrigerator, what are the pros and cons of a water dispenser in your refrigerator versus having something built into your countertop?
Listen, the water and ice dispenser or water dispenser in a refrigerator is honestly, I don't know that there's ever been a study, but it's almost as addictive as narcotics. I swear, people that have to have their refrigerator with an ice and water dispenser. So 2 things, not to break any hearts, because I actually have one at my house, but I will break your heart and say mine is broken. The ice makers break constantly. Doesn't matter the brand. Don't please somebody not ask me what's a brand that doesn't break, because I'd be lying to you to pick one. They all are grinding hard ice with plastic, a lot of plastic parts. So that's number one. But the sink, the filtration is a big difference. Okay. So in most cases, really in all cases, refrigerator filtration is really carbon filtration. It's really there to mask taste and odor.
Yeah. It's
not true pure filtration. When we think of like spring water or, something to that level. So don't be misled there. A lot of people don't think about that. They see that filter and they think, oh, I'm good. It's not. It's really just trying to mask the smell and taste of hopefully already conditioned water from the town or wherever it comes. Sink filtration can be very different, and there's different types. You can have a point of use filter, the kind we've kind of saw growing up that looks like a small gooseneck or something coming out of the counter where you actually have a little lever and it's a slow, steady stream of filtered water. Those are okay, but kind of old school now, not really the way people are going as much for a bunch of reasons. The filters are finicky. They clog very easily. You get about 750 gallons of flow out of a filter. They're expensive to change. You got to get down on your hands and knees to change them. A lot of times you need a wrench to change them. Like, it's some work there. There's some new systems out there that are what's called inline water filtration. So, and there's really only a few, but we sell a brand that literally just connects to the cold water side of your main kitchen faucet. So there's no extra hole drilled into the counter. It taps right into that cold water line that goes up into your main faucet. You'd get pure streaming flow, so you'd never know that it's filtered. Like filling a lemonade or a coffee urn in the morning, going to be very quick, fast. Rinsing vegetables fast, but you can get them up to 5,000 or 7,000 gallons of water. It's far more economical than buying refrigerator replacement filters or the point of use ones we talked about that came out of the counter. And ultimately, the filtration is pure filtration. And why it's pure filtration and why it's different than the one in the refrigerator. Look at your refrigerator water filter. They're very short and small. Okay. And filtration, good water filtration needs contact time on the media or the material that's in the filter. Okay. We talked about this last week, Fran. I gave you a history lesson on water. You were very impressed. But it's just what you got this week. Yeah. If you were to think about it and look inside and cut away a cross section of one of these water filters, it's basically a tube that runs through the middle. And there's media, different types of proprietary medias, that carbon and, there's all these types of things that run up and down the side of the filter, but they're much taller, right, than the one that would be inside your refrigerator. So the water naturally can go through all these different materials and truly take out a much finer micron of filtration, really pure filtration. So, it's a superior way to go. And honestly, it's a lot of people don't even know about it. They're very reasonably priced, and over the long term, save you a ton of money on the cost of buying Poland Spring at the store. And certainly better for the environment and superior filtered water. So
absolutely. And even like you said, those full flow ones, like really great, obviously for your kitchen sink. We sell a lot of them even for your bathroom. A lot of people they have smaller ones that are 1,500 gallons a year. If you're, water when you're brushing your teeth or anything like that. Like we have a lot of people that will put.
Yeah, we say getting up in the middle of the night and wanting to have a glass of water or take medicine. If you had to come downstairs and go up and down different flights, it's really kind of nice to have filtered water right there in the bathroom that you could actually drink. I mean, you'd never normally think to do that, but you could.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, switching gears once again. We're covering everything today. So I know ventilation is a topic near and dear to you. So would you recommend someone get a recirculating hood?
Listen, I won't insult about 50% of any audience because 50% of people have to recirculate the hoods. I don't think that anyone necessarily wants to. I think maybe some people don't know why they wouldn't want to recirculate a hood, but I also know that a lot of people have restrictions and there's reasons why they can't recirculate. I mean, where they can't vent outside and they're forced to recirculate. Recirculating hoods in a general sense, they're not a hood. I mean, they're really at that point a filter. Think of them like that. They're trying to catch some of the smoke and grease. The heat isn't going anywhere. It can't go anywhere. It pushes it back into your room. And in terms of catching the smoke and the grease, it does an okay job. It's really made to be done with a charcoal filter, which needs to be replaced. So this means whether it's an over-the-range microwave or an inexpensive $100 hood, basic builder contract hood, or a really fancy one, if there's no vent going outside of your house and you have not replaced your filter in your last 6 months in your home, you need to. You're not, something's wrong. Call us. You need to buy a filter. These carbon filters fill up with material, and you'd know if you have one, could you be replacing it about every 6 months is the recommended. So that's kind of to know, but no, for everyone else, ideally we want it to go outside. Everyone would. No one would tell me why they wouldn't, because it removes way more smoke, grease, smells, so much of that stuff builds up in your home, on your counters, on your ceilings, on your drapes. I mean, so getting that stuff out and getting the heat out of the kitchen, everyone would. It really comes back to exhausting that, truly the word, exhausting the idea of being able to do that. The cost of having of venting a hood all the way to the outside of the home. Sometimes it's not a big deal. Sometimes it is. And in a last resort, you do the recirculating hood, and you just need to make sure you're replacing the filters. I mean, that's the key part.
All right, very good. So next question, we're going to go back to ovens a little bit. And
Sure.
we talked about this a little bit actually when we had Tim, our service director, on kind of self-cleaning your oven. He had talked about it a little bit. And, is self-cleaning really bad for your oven? What alternatives are there if it is?
Yeah. I mean, self-cleaning is not great for your ovens. And I don't know how Timmy answered this. Honestly, I should have watched that show, but I was kind of disgruntled by the fact I had been replaced by such a
just 1 week
worthy replacement there. But no, so if you were to ask me, I would say, okay, good. Self-cleaning is not great for your ovens. I mean, think about what it really is. You're locking your oven door for anywhere between 2 to 5 hours, right? Depending on how dirty the oven is. And you're putting your bake and broil element on high. So that can run anywhere between 900 to 1,000 degrees.
Yeah.
And you're essentially baking everything off. Now, a couple of things. Other than GE, select GE, depending on the year, if you have any type of chrome, or really 99% of everyone needs to remove their racks, all the racks to their ovens when you self-clean, because it'll bake off all the enamel on there, and then your racks are very hard to pull out of your oven. You'll know it because it won't look perfectly chrome anymore. It kind of takes on an iridescent look. We've all done it, but it's not the end of the world. But you want to take the racks out, but it's really bad. You're taxing your oven. It would be like driving your car with your foot dead on the gas for 5 straight hours. Something in the engine could go. So are there better alternatives? Well, the alternatives that you're seeing is the manufacturers know that there's a very high service claim or incidence of failure when you self-clean your oven. Our recommendation is always never do it around a holiday or a party. Give yourself time. God forbid something will go wrong. Let us get out there to be able to get you back going. A lot of people do it, Christmas Eve or a holiday, a big party tomorrow. They want to clean their oven. They think to do it, and then they're out of an oven on the holiday. But they've come up with this steam type of cleaning. And basically what that does is that turns the oven on a much lower heat, somewhere around 450 degrees. And there's generally some type of reservoir. And you generally put a distilled water ideally in there that doesn't have a lot of minerals. And it's a lower heat, but that steam, steam's very effective at cleaning. You can do the cleaning in about 40 minutes as opposed to up to 2 to 5 hours, so much faster. You don't have the smell and the heat and the all that kind of carcinogen smoke coming in the home. It's just a much more gentle, easy way to clean, and it flakes off all that debris and goes. So the bottom line is they feel like people will do it more often. You're not overtaxing the oven. It's just as effective and probably better for all people involved. So a lot of ovens are starting to come out with that self-cleaning feature. And then there's even some aftermarket things that people have made, I've seen out there that you could actually buy, even if your oven doesn't have it. You're seeing certain brands actually have that reservoir as a function. Some brands offer both. You can still do that kind of hard clean where it's going to lock that oven door and do the whole thing, or do this soft clean with like steam, a steam assist, a lot of times it's called. So pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. One of those things, you do a little bit more often, but the steam absolutely kind of loosens everything up. You can do it as much as you want, because it's just like cooking in the oven. You're not cooking at a high temperature. You're not putting stress on the electronics. So absolutely the way to go for there.
For sure. Let's get to Cyril 89's question. And it's a long one. Yeah, wow, we're good here. We popped this up already. But given the pandemic and supply chain issues, will there be significant sales on appliances, specifically 30-inch electronics during Memorial Day, or wait until July 4th? Listen, okay. We've conditioned everybody. Those were the holidays to buy, okay? A couple of things. It's a gas world. Gas is still 70% of the cooking market. So electric ranges. It's kind of an open question there, not knowing the exact type of range, but electric is a much smaller category because the demand, forget COVID, is more into the gas. So you have less options, and if they are available, I'm going to tell you they tend to be the more expensive models right now, because those units take as many components to build an inexpensive one as it does the most expensive one. So you see manufacturers only making a couple. Colors are almost impossible to get. So if this is a white, black, anything else you want to get color, I would tell you it's probably going to be a really bad scene. But you're probably going to end up paying for a more expensive item. In terms of sales, yes, there'll be sales, but you got to be very careful, folks. Sales right now are very misleading. Many times you have to take delivery by a certain date. Half the time, the product isn't even available to take it to get any rebate or manufacturer rebates that's out there. I really think like this, where in normal times we tell you to consider sales, you really need to consider your need. If you need something, don't wait for a sale, because the prices all the while, we have 2 new price increases coming up this week again. So you save 5%, but by the time waiting, the brand went up 10%. I think people are trying to, if you're still trying to, not game is a strong word, but play the game of what has always been the rebates and the promos, it's out the door right now in COVID. It really is. I think you're chasing ghosts here to try to time that. I really do. I hate to tell you that. You might get lucky, but I think it's going to be hard pressed.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of been definitely the experience for sure over the last couple of years. No question about it.
Yeah. Let me answer Nate Yagel up there. Would you recommend a Wolf gas over a Cafe dual fuel? The answer is yes. And listen, we love Cafe GE. I'll tell you right now, GE Cafe rather. We love the brand, but there's no comparison between a Wolf and a GE Cafe. Now, GE Monogram Wolf, much closer in quality. I would still give the edge over right now to Wolf. But Wolf to a Cafe, 2 different animals. Dual fuel to all gas, that's your bigger question there. And I'd almost remove the brands for a minute to say, how do you intend to use it? If you're somebody that bakes a lot, you won't love a gas oven generally for baking on a general sense. And I'm assuming you're natural gas. If you're propane gas, it doesn't matter if it's a Wolf or any brand. You never want to buy a liquid propane range if you're a big baker. It's a heavy gas. Dual fuel is attractive. I mean, electric oven, the big thing I'm going to tell you there, Nate, is to make sure with all of these things that you have the proper power for your Cafe range, because that's going to require 220 power because it's dual fuel. So if you're just thinking, oh, wow, and a Wolf gas range only requires a 110 plug, a normal kind of like a toaster plug you plug a toaster into. So just pay attention there. Sometimes people get so fixated on, wow, I can get this great deal for a Cafe dual fuel. It's more similar in price to a Wolf gas, but I get dual fuel over here. But what's your hidden cost for running the 220 power to make the oven work in the dual fuel? Sometimes that can be $1,000, $2,000. I don't know your situation, but just make sure you thought through that one, okay? If it's mostly meat and veggies, here we go. In casseroles, however, would like to do some more baking. Natural gas is okay. Some more baking, sure. Chocolate chip cookies, you'll be fine. If you're going to become a pastry chef, I'd always recommend dual fuel. But again, just really think back to the costs of that 220 line. If it's already ready for you, then great. You're back to making your own decision. But listen, I think the Wolf is a superior product.
All right. I think we have time for one more question here. And we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about service to some degree here too. And, with the fractured supply chain, is it better to repair a broken appliance or buy a new one? And obviously, we know being in the service game, that supply chain issues could go on kind of either direction here.
Yeah. Let me see here. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was trying to. Nate had another question there. I want to answer before we leave. But with the is it better to repair? Yeah, $1 million question. So let's say that's what's life expectancy for the average appliance. Let's start there. Now, everyone. Yeah. Block your ears. I'm glad this is a one-way audience. You can type like crazy, but average appliances last 7 to 10 years if things go well. All right. What does that mean? That means if you have 6 kids and you're using front load laundry, you might get 5 years out of that baby. You might get, I don't want to jinx you might get 15, but 7 to 10 is kind of a weighted average. If it's at all close to that and you're in COVID, parts are still extremely hard to come by. So you got to start thinking about the lead time for the part, because the part's probably not available, the longevity of the unit, and then the cost to repair as opposed to replace. We're seeing a lot of people just replace because the time to get the part and the inconvenience and the weight is just as bad as, unfortunately, having to ante up to get a brand new something. That's my recommendation. A small repair, sure. A knob, wait, deal with it. If you're talking about a major component and it's anywhere close to that 7-year kind of indicator. Now, that's not to say that certain brands, professional brands, some of the, last longer. They do, but they cost significantly more too. So that's kind of a tough question to answer, not knowing the product we're talking about. But if we're talking about, microwaves, dishwashers, laundry, basic cooking and refrigeration appliances, mainstream, like a lot of us have, then I would probably say you strongly want to consider how old and then the time it's going to take to repair. I'd probably push it towards a new one.
Definitely.
Nate did ask, though, looking basically now, I'm a little slow to the punch here. He asked very cleanly right at the beginning, but a couple of questions. Looking for a 36-inch range. A Wolf gas is actually less than a KitchenAid and Cafe dual fuel. Okay, Nate, sorry, I'm back with you now. So I would say KitchenAid, definitely not a really pro stove. Cafe is really the old Monogram platform. So GE Cafe Monogram has launched all new cooking, which is really some great stuff. The Cafe, while good looking and has a place for sure, it's really on the old Monogram platform, so kind of a little bit dated in its feature set. I think there's some really good options out there. I think you should look at Fisher Paykel Pro Ranges, formerly DCS. Fisher Paykel owns DCS, the brand. DCS focused on outdoor grilling, which is really they built it. They were big into the pro outdoor cooking segment. They really focused that line there. And they took the synergies between Fisher Paykel ranges and DCS ranges years ago and put them together. And I think they're good value. I think you should consider that. I think you should consider SKS, which is Signature Kitchen Suites, another really great brand on the up and coming and has some great promos and prices. Really good. We're selling an awful lot of them. And have been pre-COVID and certainly are in COVID. So I think they'd be good options for you. That would be me. And then John Alex, what would you recommend for a slide-in electric 30-inch range under $2,000? Listen, I think electric is electric. I honestly do. I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot of difference. I think you're probably as much, John, sitting there looking at SKS is owned by LG. So LG owns LG, it owns LG Studio, and it owns Signature Kitchen Suites, which it launched a few years ago. But John's question was, what would you recommend for a slide-in 30-inch range under 2,000? I mean, listen, LG does have a good slide-in range under 2,000. Beko is another brand. Honestly, it's a phenomenal range, a ton of features under $2,000. I say those two brands because they're available in most markets, certainly available for us, but in a lot of markets and parts. Like those companies have really continued to all things considered, do a really good job through COVID. And buying, it's the easy part, but God forbid you have a service issue, which, almost, anywhere from 20 to 30% of products can have some type of an issue in the first 2 years of ownership. Mm-hmm. And if we're still in COVID for quite a while, those are brands that still have pretty good availability. I feel good about getting it repaired. God forbid. But I think those are two brands that I consider under $2,000 for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think that's going to do it for today. We definitely had a lot of great questions, great participation from the audience again. So we really appreciate that. We'll be back next Thursday at 4 for another episode of Appliance Advisors. Thanks again, as always, Dennis. Good to see you this week.
Yeah, listen, I will say this. We're on fire with a lot of questions. We got to end it because, it's in our contract, Fran, that the network doesn't know. Listen, I'm happy to answer all these all day long. These are great questions. I'll promise you this much. We'll answer it next week for sure coming in because these are all really good questions. We'll take the ones that have come in from Chef Andrew and John had another question about ProBake, and Cyril had another question, and Jupiter One had one about propane. Yes, you do lose 15% of performance when you do liquid propane over natural gas. Sorry, Jupiter, I had to answer that one for you. It takes 2 seconds. All right, so we'll answer some more next week, but it was a lot of fun. We appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks, everyone.
See you now.